I didn't mean to discover what my husband had been hiding, but some things you can't unhear. The evening had started so normally. James had come home from work, loosened his tie the way he always did, kissed me on the cheek, and asked about my day. We'd fallen into our comfortable routine: dinner, wine, a movie we'd both seen before but enjoyed enough to watch again. Everything felt so ordinary, so safe. Until it didn't. When James and I first met 7 years ago, I was immediately drawn to his quiet confidence, his thoughtfulness. He wasn't like the other men I'd dated. Loud, trying too hard to impress. James listened when I spoke. He remembered details about my life that even I sometimes forgot. The kind of man who would surprise me with my favorite dessert after a particularly rough day at work without me having to say a word. Our marriage wasn't perfect. None are. But it was solid. At least that's what I thought until last night when everything I believed about us was called into question with just 2 syllables. It started innocently enough. After the movie, we'd moved to the bedroom, the familiar dance of intimacy that had become somewhat routine, but still satisfying. James had always been attentive, generous, but something felt different last night. He was more passionate, more intense, his hands gripping me with an urgency I hadn't felt from him in months. And then it happened. As he approached his climax, eyes closed, lost in the moment, he moaned a name. Ellie. My name is Kate. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. The room was dim, we'd both had wine with dinner, but the name hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. James didn't seem to notice his slip, continuing until his breathing slowed and he collapsed beside me, seemingly unaware that he'd just shattered our world. I lay there, my body rigid, mind racing. Ellie. Who was Ellie? The name wasn't familiar. Not a coworker he'd mentioned, not a friend from his past that I knew of. Just Ellie. Some woman who occupied his thoughts so completely that her name escaped in our most intimate moment. That was amazing, James murmured, kissing my shoulder before rolling over to his side of the bed. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep, while I stared at the ceiling, the name echoing in my head. Ellie. Ellie? Ellie. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I watched the shadows move across our bedroom wall as the night passed, my mind constructing 1,000 different scenarios, each more painful than the last. Was he having an affair? Was it just a fantasy? Someone from work? An old girlfriend? The possibilities were endless and excruciating. By morning, my eyes were burning from exhaustion, but I'd made a decision. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. I needed more information before I accused my husband of infidelity based on a name uttered during sex. So when James woke, I pretended everything was normal, kissing him goodbye as he left for work, the taste of betrayal bitter on my lips. After he left, I sat at our kitchen counter, coffee going cold in my hands, unsure of my next move. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperation makes us capable of things we'd normally consider beneath us. I went to his home office, turned on his laptop. He'd never hidden his password from me, another sign I'd interpreted as trust, but now felt like carelessness on his part. His emails revealed nothing suspicious. Neither did his browser history. I was almost relieved until I checked his Instagram messages, and there she was, Ellie Morrison. Dozens of messages stretching back 3 months. Starting professional, she apparently worked at a rival financial firm, then gradually becoming more personal. Dinner was amazing last night. Can't stop thinking about it. And you. Miss you already. These meetings aren't the same without seeing you across the table. Can't wait for next week. The conference will be the perfect cover. My hands trembled as I read through their exchanges. There were no explicit declarations of love, no graphic sexual content. Somehow that would have been easier to dismiss as pure lust. Instead, I found something more devastating: genuine connection. Inside jokes. Book recommendations. Deep conversations about life goals and disappointments. The last message was from 2 days ago, from James. Conference is set, 3 days away from everything, just us. The conference in Boston, the one he'd been talking about for weeks, the one he was leaving for tomorrow. I closed the laptop feeling sick. 7 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected. James wasn't just having an affair, he was falling for someone else. Someone named Ellie who made him moan her name while making love to his wife. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Nora. Coffee this afternoon? I have news. I stared at the message, wondering how normal life could continue when mine had just imploded. But I needed to talk to someone before I confronted James. Yes, I typed back. I need to talk to you too. It's important. Nora's eyes widened as I recounted what had happened, her untouched latte sitting between us at our favorite cafe. He said another woman's name during sex? She whispered, leaning forward. And you're sure you didn't mishear? Positive, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And I found their messages. He's meeting her at a conference in Boston tomorrow. What are you going to do? Nora asked, reaching across to squeeze my hand. That was the question I'd been asking myself all day. What does one do when the foundation of their marriage cracks? When trust evaporates in an instant? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to confront him immediately. Another part wants to wait and see how far he'll take this lie, and a small, petty part wants to show up in Boston and catch them together. Nora considered this, her expression serious. What do you want, Kate? Regardless of what happens next, do you want to save your marriage? It was a question I hadn't allowed myself to consider yet. Did I want to fight for us? Was there even an us worth saving anymore? I don't know that either, I confessed. I love him, the him I thought I knew, but this James? The one who can look me in the eye while planning rendezvous with another woman? I don't know if I even know that person. Talk to him, Nora urged, before he leaves for Boston. Give him a chance to explain. What possible explanation could there be for moaning another woman's name? I asked bitterly. I don't know, she admitted, but 7 years deserves at least one conversation before you make any decisions. She was right, of course. As much as the thought of confronting James terrified me, the alternative, letting him leave for Boston tomorrow to meet Ellie, was worse. I spent the rest of the afternoon rehearsing what I would say, how I would remain calm and dignified even as my world collapsed around me. When I heard his key in the lock that evening, my heart pounded so hard I was sure he could hear it from across the room. Kate? James called out, setting down his briefcase. You home? In the living room, I answered, my voice surprisingly steady. He appeared in the doorway, smiling that smile that had once made my heart skip. Now it just made me wonder how many times he'd smiled at Ellie the same way. Hey, beautiful, he said, coming to kiss me. I turned my head slightly, his lips landing on my cheek instead of my mouth. He pulled back, a question in his eyes. Everything okay? We need to talk, I said simply. James sat across from me, confusion evident on his face. Sounds serious? What's up? I took a deep breath. Who's Ellie? The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost comical. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no sound came out. You said her name, I continued, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. Last night, during sex. Kate, And then I found your messages, I added, about the conference in Boston, about your dinner dates, about how you can't stop thinking about her. He looked stunned, caught in a lie too big to escape. It's not what you think, he finally managed. It never is it? I replied, bitterness seeping into my tone. So tell me, James, what is it exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks an awful lot like my husband is having an affair. James ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it just seemed like another act, another way to buy time while he crafted yet another lie. I'm not sleeping with her, he said finally. But you want to, I challenged. You're planning to, in Boston. He didn't deny it. That silence was confirmation enough. How long? I asked, needing to understand the scope of his betrayal. We met 3 months ago at a cross-firm meeting, he admitted. It started as just conversation. She's smart, challenging. We have a lot in common, including a mutual disregard for your marriage vows, I interjected. James flinched. It wasn't supposed to happen, Kate. I never went looking for this. But you didn't walk away either, I pointed out. You cultivated it, nurtured it, made plans to take it further. He couldn't. Meet my eyes. I got caught up in something I didn't know how to end. So, ending our marriage seemed easier. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. No. James looked up, alarmed. I don't want to end our marriage. Kate, I love you. The words that had once filled me with warmth now left me cold. People who love each other don't do this, James. People make mistakes, he countered. I've made a terrible one, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. Doesn't it? I challenged. You were planning to sleep with her in Boston. You said her name while you were with me. Those aren't the actions of a man who loves his wife. James moved to sit beside me, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. Kate, please. It was a stupid, selfish mistake. I got caught up in the excitement, the newness. But it's not real. What we have is real. I studied his face, searching for truth in the features I'd memorized over 7 years. How can I believe anything you say now? Because I'm telling you the truth, he insisted. I'll cancel Boston. I'll cut off all contact with Ellie. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Part of me wanted to believe him, to grab onto this lifeline and pull our marriage back from the brink. But another part, our jobber, stronger part, couldn't forget the name on his lips, the secret messages, the lies. I think you should go, I said quietly. Go where? James asked, panic edging into his voice. I don't care. Just not here. Not tonight. I need space to think. Kate, please. If you want any chance of saving this marriage, I interrupted, you'll respect that I need time. Go to a hotel, stay with a friend, but don't be here when I wake up tomorrow. The devastation on his face almost broke my resolve. Almost. Okay, he said finally, standing up. I'll go. But Kate, I love you. Only you. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to you. As I watched him pack an overnight bag, I wondered if anything would ever be enough. The trust between us was shattered. Could it ever be fully repaired? Or would I always be waiting for the next Ellie, the next betrayal? After James left, the house felt eerily quiet. I wandered from room to room, seeing our life together with new eyes, the photos from our wedding, our honeymoon, holidays with family. All of it now carried a question mark. Had he been happy? Had I missed signs that he was looking elsewhere? I ended up in our bed, the same bed where just 24 hours earlier, my husband had called another woman's name. Sleep seemed impossible, but eventually exhaustion won out, and I drifted into a fitful slumber. The next morning, I woke to several text messages from James. I'm so sorry. I love you. Please tell me we can talk about this. I canceled Boston. I stared at my phone, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore him completely. Another part wanted to demand more answers. But the question Nora had asked kept circling in my mind. What did I want? Did I want to fight for my marriage? Did I want to try to rebuild what James had so carelessly damaged? Or was this the sign I needed that something fundamental was broken between us? Something that perhaps had been broken for longer than I'd realized? I didn't have answers yet, but I did know one thing. I needed to talk to Ellie. It wasn't hard to find her information. A quick search of her name and James's firm gave me her work email. Before I could second-guess myself, I composed a message. Ellie, you don't know me, but I'm James Hayes' wife, Kate. I think we need to talk. If you're willing, please call me. I included my number and hit send before I could change my mind. The response came faster than I expected. My phone rang just 20 minutes later, an unknown number lighting up the screen. Hello? I answered, heart pounding. Kate? A woman's voice, hesitant but clear. This is Ellie Morrison. I got your email. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Thank you for calling. I imagine this is as uncomfortable for you as it is for me. More so, I'd guess, she replied, surprising me with her honesty. What do you want to know? What did I want to know? Everything? Nothing. The details that would destroy me completely and the truths that might set me free. Are you sleeping with my husband? I asked directly. No, Ellie answered without hesitation. But, she paused, we were planning to, in Boston. At least she wasn't lying. How did it start? At a meeting between our firms. We got talking about a book we'd both read. Then it was coffee to discuss it further. Then lunch. It escalated. From there. And you knew he was married? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Yes. Another pause. He said you two had grown apart, that you were more like roommates than spouses. The pain of those words took my breath away. Is that how James saw our marriage? As some lifeless, passionless arrangement? That's not true, I said firmly, though a small voice inside me wondered if there was some truth to it that I hadn't wanted to see. I'm starting to realize that, Ellie replied. For what it's worth, I ended things this morning. After he told me what happened, I wasn't sure if that made me feel better or worse. Did you love him? The question surprised both of us, I think. I was infatuated, she admitted after a moment. James is charming, attentive. He made me feel special. But love? No, I don't think either of us was there yet. Yet. The word hung between us, a testament to what might have been if circumstances had been different. Thank you for being honest, I said finally. Kate? Ellie's voice was tentative. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for the hurt I've caused you. You didn't deserve this. I ended the call feeling strangely hollow. The woman I'd built up as a villain in my mind was just a person. Someone who'd made poor choices, yes, but not the monster I'd imagined. It humanized the situation in a way that made it both easier and harder to process. James had been calling and texting all morning. Finally, I sent a simple reply. I spoke with Ellie. Come home at 7. We'll talk. The hours until then stretched endlessly. I cleaned the house, a nervous habit I'd developed over years of anxiety. By the time James arrived, precisely at 7, our home smelled of lemon polish and bleach. He entered cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Kate? In the kitchen? I called. He found me sitting at our island counter, 2 glasses of wine poured. I decided alcohol might make this conversation marginally more bearable. You spoke to Ellie? He asked, taking the seat across from me. I nodded. She was surprisingly forthcoming. James looked down at his hands. I ended it completely. She understood. From what she said, it was mutual, I replied. Apparently, you both realized some things this morning. He took a sip of wine, clearly trying to gather his thoughts. Kate, I need you to know how deeply sorry I am. What I did was inexcusable. Why? I asked simply. Why her? Why now? What was missing here that you found with her? James looked pained. Nothing was missing. That's what makes this so awful, so unforgivable. It wasn't about you or any deficiency in our marriage. It was about me being selfish, getting caught up in something new and exciting. You told her we were more like roommates than spouses, I said quietly. Shame colored his features. I said a lot of things I didn't mean. Things to justify what I was doing, to make myself feel less guilty. Were they all lies? I pressed. Or is there some truth there we've both been ignoring? James was quiet for a moment. I think maybe we've gotten comfortable, fallen into patterns, but that's what happens in long-term relationships. It doesn't mean what we have isn't valuable or real. But it made you vulnerable to someone new, I pointed out. Yes, he admitted, and that's on me, not you or our marriage. I should have recognized what was happening and shut it down immediately. We talked for hours, peeling back layers of our relationship, examining parts that had been neglected, acknowledging patterns that had formed over 7 years together. It was painful, revealing, and strangely intimate, more so than we'd been in months. What happens now? James finally asked, his voice rough with emotion. I took a deep breath. I don't know. I can't just forgive this and move on like nothing happened. But I also can't throw away 7 years without trying to understand what went wrong and if it can be fixed. So we try? Hope crept into his voice. We try, I agreed cautiously. But James, I need time and space to process all of this. And I need complete transparency from you going forward. Anything? He promised. Whatever you need. For starters, you'll sleep in the guest room, I said firmly. I'm not ready to share a bed with you yet. He nodded, accepting this boundary, without argument. And I think we should see a counselor, I added. Someone who can help us navigate this, whatever this is. I'd already been looking into options, James admitted. I found a few therapists who specialize in couples recovering from infidelity. From infidelity. The word hung in the air between us. Infidelity. My husband had been unfaithful, if not physically, then emotionally. It was a reality I was still struggling to accept. As James moved his things to the guest room that night, I sat alone in our bedroom, wondering if we could ever find our way back from this. Trust, once broken, is like a shattered mirror. You can piece it back together, but the cracks remain visible, a permanent reminder of what happened. But maybe, just maybe, what we rebuilt could be different, not the same as before, but possibly stronger in the broken places. Only time would tell if we had the courage and commitment to find out. That night, I slept alone in our bed, the space beside me both painful in its emptiness and comforting in its simplicity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding trust. But for tonight, I allowed myself to simply feel everything. The hurt, the anger, the confusion, and yes, the small flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. Because despite everything, I still loved him. And sometimes, love is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible to win. The next morning dawned with that peculiar clarity that sometimes follows emotional upheaval. I felt different, raw but strangely calm, like the eye of a hurricane had settled over me. James and I moved around each other awkwardly during breakfast, the new arrangement casting unfamiliar shadows between us. He made coffee while I prepared toast, our usually synchronized morning routine now stilted and self-conscious. "I've scheduled a consultation with Dr. Reeves for Thursday," James said, sliding his phone across the counter to show me the appointment details. "She specializes in couples therapy, particularly around trust issues." Trust issues. Such a clinical term for what we were experiencing. "Thursday works," I replied, taking a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter, though I wasn't sure if that was the brew or my state of mind. James hesitated before speaking again. "I've also told Greg I'm taking some time off work. A week, maybe more." Greg was James's business partner at their financial consulting firm. They'd started it together 5 years ago, building it from nothing into a respectable mid-sized practice. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That we're working through some personal issues," James replied. He didn't pry. I nodded simultaneously, grateful for and disturbed by how easily our crisis could be packaged into such a benign phrase. Personal issues. Like we were dealing with a minor disagreement about vacation plans, not the possible end of our marriage. I should get ready for work, I said, standing. Unlike James, I couldn't just take time off. My position as marketing director for a nonprofit meant year-end campaigns were ramping up, demanding my attention regardless of my personal chaos. "Kate," James called as I turned to leave. "What can I do today to start making things right?" I paused, considering his question. What could he possibly do in a single day to begin repairing what had been broken? "I don't know, James," I answered honestly. "Maybe that's something to discuss with Dr. Reeves on Thursday." His face fell slightly, but he nodded. Of course. Work provided a welcome distraction, though several colleagues commented on my distracted state. I brushed off their concerns with vague references to not sleeping well, which wasn't entirely a lie. By lunchtime, I was exhausted from maintaining the facade of normalcy. My phone buzzed with a text from Nora. "Coffee break? I'm near your office." 20 minutes later, we were seated at a quiet corner table in my favorite cafe, 2 lattes between us. "You look like hell," Nora said bluntly, studying my face. "What happened?" I gave her an abbreviated version of the previous night's events, my confrontation with James, my conversation with Ellie, the tentative steps toward potential reconciliation. "So, you're staying?" Nora asked when I finished. "I'm trying," I corrected. "There's a difference." Nora nodded, absently stirring her latte. "Have you told anyone else? Your mom? Hannah?" Hannah was my younger sister, currently teaching English in Japan. "Not yet," I admitted. I can barely articulate what's happening to myself, let alone explain it to them. "Fair enough," Nora agreed. "But you know they'd support you, whatever you decide." "I know." I sighed, rubbing my temples where a headache was forming. "Right now, I just need to get through each day. Figure out what I'm feeling before I involve more people. And what are you feeling? Nora pressed gently. I considered her question, trying to identify the emotions swirling beneath my carefully maintained composure. Angry, I said finally. Hurt. Confused. But also, I hesitated, almost embarrassed by the admission. Relieved, in a strange way. Nora raised an eyebrow. Relieved? That it's out in the open, I explained. That whatever was wrong between us, whatever made James look elsewhere, is now something we can see and address. Does that make sense? It does, Nora agreed. Sometimes naming the monster makes it less frightening. I wouldn't go that far, I said with a weak smile. It's still pretty terrifying. But manageable, Nora suggested. 1 day at a time. 1 day at a time. It became my mantra in the days that followed. 1 meal, 1 conversation, 1 night sleeping alone in what had been our shared bed. Small increments of time that I could handle when thinking about the bigger picture, our future, our marriage, felt too overwhelming. Thursday arrived with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Dr. Reeves's office was in a converted Victorian house, her therapy room a comfortable space with muted colors and soft lighting designed to put clients at ease. James and I sat at opposite ends of a plush sofa, the physical distance between us a telling reflection of our emotional state. Dr. Reeves, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, observed us carefully as we introduced ourselves. Before we begin, she said, I want to clarify that my role isn't to assign blame or to push you toward a predetermined outcome. I'm here to help you communicate effectively and make informed decisions about your relationship, whatever those decisions may be. I appreciated her directness, the acknowledgement that reconciliation wasn't the only possible path forward. Now, she continued, why don't we start with what brings you here today? James looked at me, silently asking permission to speak first. I nodded. I betrayed Kate's trust, he said simply. I developed an inappropriate relationship with a woman at work. It didn't become physical, but it was heading in that direction when Kate discovered it. And how did you discover this relationship, Kate? Dr. Reeves asked. I explained about the name during intimacy, the subsequent investigation, the confrontation. As I spoke, I watched James's expression shift between shame, regret, and a flicker of something else I couldn't quite identify. James, what was this relationship fulfilling for you? Dr. Reeves asked once I'd finished. James looked startled by the directness of her question. I'm not sure I can articulate it clearly. Try, Dr. Reeves encouraged. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. It felt uncomplicated, he said. Finally, with Ellie, I didn't have history or expectations. I could be whoever I wanted to be in those moments. And who did you want to be? Dr. Reeves probed. Someone more exciting, I guess, James admitted. In my life with Kate, I'm reliable James, predictable James, the James who pays the bills on time and remembers to schedule the plumber. He glanced at me apologetically. With Ellie, I could be spontaneous, fascinating. It was like playing a role I don't get to play in real life. His words stung, though I'd asked for honesty. Was that how he saw our life together? As some mundane existence he needed to escape? Kate, what are you feeling hearing this? Dr. Reeves asked, noting my expression. Confused, I said after a moment, because I never asked James to be reliable James at the expense of being exciting or spontaneous. That was a choice he made. It wasn't a conscious choice, James objected. It just happened. We fell into patterns. We, I repeated, as if I had equal responsibility in creating this situation. That's not what I meant, James backpedaled. Isn't it? I challenged, the calm I'd been maintaining beginning to fracture. Because it sounds like you're saying our marriage became boring, and instead of addressing that with me, you found someone who made you feel exciting again. Let's pause here, Dr. Reeves interjected gently. James, Kate is identifying something important. The implication that the state of your marriage somehow justified looking outside it for fulfillment. Is that what you believe? James looked genuinely distressed. No, there's no justification for what I did. None. Then what are you saying? I pressed. I'm trying to understand it myself, James admitted. Why I did something so contrary to my values, so harmful to someone I love. He looked at me directly. I'm not blaming you or our marriage, Kate. This was my failure, my weakness. Dr. Reeves nodded thoughtfully. Understanding the why behind actions like these is important, but it's equally important to distinguish between explanation and excuse. James, you can explore what made you vulnerable to this situation without using that exploration to justify your choices. The rest of the session continued in this vein. Careful excavation of our relationship dynamics, patterns that had formed over 7 years, unspoken expectations and resentments that had accumulated beneath the surface of our seemingly stable marriage. By the time we left, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely lighter, as if naming these underlying issues had loosened their grip slightly. We had scheduled another appointment for the following week, with individual sessions for each of us in between. In the car, James broke the silence first. That was intense, but necessary, I acknowledged. Kate, he began hesitantly. What? She said about distinguishing between explanation and excuse. I want you to know I'm not looking for excuses. I just want to understand why I was capable of hurting you this way, so I can make sure it never happens again. If there isn't again, I reminded him quietly. James's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Right. If. That night, I lay awake, in our bed, my bed now, thinking about what James had revealed in therapy. Had I contributed to the emotional distance between us? Had I stopped seeing him as the complex, multifaceted person he was, and started relating to him as just reliable James? I couldn't deny that routines had taken over much of our marriage. Date nights had become takeout and Netflix. Conversations had devolved into household logistics and work complaints. When had we last discussed our dreams, our fears, the things that lit us up inside? My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from James just down the hall. Are you awake? Yes, I replied. 3. Dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I miss you. Not just tonight. I've missed you for longer than I realized. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Was this insight or manipulation? Genuine reflection or calculated effort to win forgiveness? Before I could decide, another text appeared. You don't have to answer that. I just wanted you to know. Good night, Kate. The next day was Friday, and I'd taken it off work, needing space to process everything from the therapy session. James had gone to his office briefly to handle some urgent matters, leaving me alone with my thoughts. On impulse, I found myself in his home office, not searching for evidence this time, but trying to reconnect with the man I'd married. Photos lined his bookshelves. Our wedding, hiking trips, family gatherings. In one, we were laughing uncontrollably, having just fallen while attempting a dramatic pose at a friend's wedding photo booth. I picked it up, remembering that moment, the champagne buzz, the way James had whispered ridiculous observations about other guests in my ear all evening, how we'd snuck away early to make love in our hotel room, unable to wait until the reception ended. When had that playfulness faded? When had we stopped seeing each other as sources of joy and adventure, and started viewing each other as just reliable fixtures in a comfortable life? The sound of the front door opening startled me. James appeared in the doorway, looking surprised, to find me in his office. Sorry, I said, hastily replacing the photo. No, it's fine, he assured me. Everything okay? I nodded, though okay seemed an absurd descriptor for our current situation. James noticed the photo I'd been holding. The Peterson wedding, he said with a small smile. You were so beautiful that night. I couldn't take my eyes off you. We were happy, I said softly. We were, he agreed, stepping into the room but maintaining a careful distance. Kate, can I ask you something? I nodded. When did we stop having fun together? When did I become boring, reliable James and you became predictable, Kate? I finished for him. That's not how I see you, he objected. Isn't it? I challenged. If I've become the embodiment of routine and obligation in your mind, doesn't it stand to reason I might see you the same way? James looked stricken. Have you? Seen me that way? I considered my answer carefully. Not consciously. But maybe I stopped looking for the spontaneous, exciting parts of you. Maybe I got too comfortable with the version of us we'd become. A heavy silence fell between us. What do we do with that realization? James finally asked. I don't know, I admitted. Figure out if those other versions of ourselves still exist, I guess. And if they do, whether we want to be those people with each other, or... I couldn't finish the sentence. Or with other people, James said quietly, completing my thought. The possibility hung in the air between us, more real now that it had been voiced aloud. I want it to be with you, James said firmly. I want to be all versions of myself with you, Kate. The reliable one and the spontaneous one. The boring one and the exciting one. Wanting isn't enough, I pointed out. We've broken something fundamental between us. Trust, respect, the belief that we're enough for each other. Those things can be rebuilt, James insisted. If we both want them to be. Can they? I asked, genuine uncertainty in my voice. Or will I always wonder every time you're working late or at a conference or just quiet and distant if there's another Ellie? James flinched at the name. I can't erase what I did, he acknowledged. But I can spend every day proving that it was the worst mistake of my life, one I'll never repeat. And I'm supposed to just wait and see? Hope that this time you mean it? No, James said, surprising me. You're supposed to decide if what we had, what we could have again, is worth the work of rebuilding. And if it is, then we do that work together. Not with me proving myself to you, but with both of us creating. Something new from the pieces of what broke. His words resonated with something Dr. Reeves had said about not trying to recreate the old relationship, but building a new, stronger one with clear-eyed awareness of the vulnerabilities in the previous version. I need time, I said finally. Take. All the time you need, James replied. I'm not going anywhere. That weekend became a strange limbo of separate activities and shared space. James slept in the guest room, but we ate meals together, had careful conversations about neutral topics, watched a movie while sitting at opposite ends of the couch. It was civility without intimacy, coexistence without connection. Sunday evening, my phone rang with a FaceTime call from my sister Hannah. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I could maintain the facade of normalcy, but ultimately decided I needed her perspective. Hey there! Hannah's smiling face appeared on screen, her apartment in Tokyo visible behind her. Long time no see? Hi, Hannah! I managed a genuine smile, always happy to see my younger sister despite the circumstances. How's Japan? Humid. Exciting. Exhausting, she laughed. But enough about me? You look off. What's going on? Leave it to Hannah to cut straight to the chase. Even through a screen from thousands of miles away, she could read me better than almost anyone. It's complicated, I hedged. I've got time, she replied, settling in. Spill. So I did. I told her everything. The name during intimacy, the messages I'd found, the confrontations, the therapy, the limbo we now existed in. Hannah listened without interruption, her expression shifting between shock, anger, and concern. That absolute bastard, she said when I finished. Want me to fly home and kick his ass? Because I will. Despite everything, I laughed. I don't think physical violence is the solution here. Debatable, Hannah muttered. Then, more seriously, what are you thinking? Are you leaning toward working it out or ending it? If you'd asked me immediately after I found out, I would have said ending it. No question, I admitted. But now, I don't know. There's history between us. Good history. 7 years of building a life together. History isn't a reason to stay in a relationship that's broken, Hannah pointed out gently. I know, I sighed. But what if it's broken but fixable? What if what comes after could be better than what came before? What if it's not? Hannah countered. What if you invest months or years into rebuilding, only to discover the foundation was too damaged from the start? It was the question I'd been avoiding, the fear that lurked beneath all my careful consideration. What if reconciliation was just prolonging the inevitable? I don't have an answer for that, I admitted. You don't need answers right now. Hannah assured me, you just need to be honest with yourself about what you want and what you can live with. After we hung up, I found myself drawn to our backyard garden, a small oasis I'd cultivated over the years. The late summer flowers were in full bloom, their colors vivid in the evening light. I sat on the bench James had built for my birthday 3 years ago, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions Hannah's questions had stirred up. What did I want? The answer wasn't as clear-cut as I'd expected. Part of me wanted to punish James, to make him feel a fraction of the pain I was experiencing. Another part wanted to run away, start fresh somewhere without the constant reminders of betrayal. And yet another part, perhaps the largest part, wanted to understand, to heal, to find our way back to each other, changed but intact. The sound of the back door opening interrupted my thoughts. James stood hesitantly at the edge of the patio, 2 mugs in his hands. I made tea, he said. Thought you might like some. Thank you, I replied, accepting the mug he offered. Earl Grey, my favorite. James remained standing, clearly uncertain whether his presence was welcome or an intrusion. You can sit, I said, gesturing to the space beside me on the bench. It's your garden too. He sat, careful to maintain some distance between us. It's beautiful out here. You've created something special. Something special. We created it, I corrected. You built this bench, installed the irrigation system, hauled countless bags of mulch. But the vision was yours, James said. I just provided the labor. We sat in silence for a moment, sipping our tea and watching, as the setting sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink. I was talking to Hannah, I said finally. She offered to fly home and kick your ass. James let out a surprised laugh. That sounds like Hannah. She also asked me what I want, I continued, whether I'm leaning toward working it out or ending it. James tensed beside me. And what did you tell her? That I don't know, I admitted, but I'm trying to figure it out. Kate, James set his mug down, turning slightly to face me. I know it's not my place to influence your decision. This is about what you can live with, what you want for your future. But I need you to know that what you decide will change my entire life. If you choose to try again with me, I will spend every day making sure you never regret that choice. And if you don't, his voice faltered. If you don't, I'll respect that decision. But it would devastate me in ways I can't even articulate. The raw vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't calculated manipulation or desperate pleading. It was simple truth. I believe you mean that right now, I said carefully. But how can either of us know what you'll feel in 6 months or a year? How do I trust that the next time our relationship hits a rough patch, you won't seek validation elsewhere again? Can't prove a negative, James acknowledged. I can't prove what I won't do in the future. I can only promise and then live that promise every day. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But Kate, what happened? It wasn't about a rough patch. It wasn't about you at all. It was about me not recognizing my own restlessness, my own fear, that I was becoming someone boring and predictable. Fear of what? I asked. Of disappearing, James said after a moment. Of becoming so defined by routines and responsibilities that the person I used to be, the person you fell in love with, vanished completely. So you created this exciting secret life where you could be that person again, I surmised, rather than talking to me about feeling lost. Yes, James admitted, and it was cowardly and selfish and the worst decision I've ever made. We fell. Silent again, the weight of his confession settling between us. In the distance, a neighbor's wind chimes created a gentle melody as a breeze picked up. I'm afraid too, I said finally. Afraid that whatever wasn't working between us will happen. Again. Afraid that I'll never be able to look at you without remembering this pain. Afraid that if I walk away, I'll always wonder if we could have fixed it. All valid fears, James acknowledged. I have them too. So what do we do with all this fear? I asked. James considered the question. Maybe we acknowledge it. Face it together. Use it as information, rather than letting it make our decisions for us. It was such a reasonable, thoughtful response. So typically James, and yet it revealed a depth of self-reflection that gave me pause. Was this crisis forcing both of us to grow in ways we might not have otherwise? "I'd like to try something," I said impulsively. "Not a decision about our future, just an experiment." "Anything," James replied, curiosity evident in his expression. "I'd like us to go on a date," I said. "A real date, like we're just getting to know each other. No talk of what happened, no discussion of therapy or healing or the future. Just two people spending an evening together to see if there's still something worth exploring." James looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Like starting from scratch?" "Not exactly," I clarified. "We can't erase our history, and I wouldn't want to. But maybe we can set it aside for one evening and just be present with each other. See who we are now, after everything." "I'd like that," James said softly. "When?" "Tomorrow night. There's that new restaurant downtown everyone's been talking about." "It's supposed to be impossible to get a reservation," James commented. I smiled slightly. That sounds like a challenge to me. And for the first time in days, a genuine smile spread across James's face, not hopeful or apologetic or careful, but simply pleased. "Challenge accepted," he said. As we finished our tea and watched the first stars appear in the darkening sky, I felt something unfurl within me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps its precursor, the willingness to consider a future where forgiveness might be possible. Monday dawned with an odd mixture of anxiety and anticipation. The workday dragged as my thoughts repeatedly drifted to the evening ahead. Was this date a foolish idea? Would it feel forced, artificial, a painful reminder of what we'd lost rather than a glimpse of what we might reclaim? My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Reservation confirmed for 7:30. "I'll pick you up at 7? The formality of it made me smile despite my nervousness. "I'll be ready," I replied. At 6:45, I found myself standing before our closet, deliberating, with the seriousness of someone preparing for a first date. In a way, it was. A first date with this new version of us, shaped by pain but perhaps stronger for having faced it. I chose a deep blue dress I'd bought months ago but never worn, something James hadn't seen before. It felt symbolic somehow. New. Territory for both of us. At precisely 7 Gauss, the doorbell rang. The absurdity of my husband ringing the doorbell of our shared home wasn't lost on me, but it fit the conceit of the evening. I opened the door to find James standing there in a charcoal suit, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Not roses or lilies or any standard romantic bloom, but the same varieties that grew in our backyard garden. "These reminded me of you," he said simply, offering them to me. "They're beautiful," I replied, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Come in while I put them in water." In the kitchen, I arranged the flowers in a vase while James waited, his posture conveying a nervousness I found strangely endearing. "You look stunning," he said as I placed the vase on the counter. "Thank you." I allowed myself to really look at him for the first time in days. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The drive downtown was filled with the kind of careful small talk of people getting reacquainted, comments about traffic, a new building under construction, the unseasonably warm weather. It should have felt awkward, this deliberate avoidance of our usual topics, but instead it created a space where neither of us had to be the wronged wife or the repentant husband. We could just be Kate and James out for the evening. Parish, the restaurant James had somehow secured reservations for, was exactly as rumored. Elegant without being stuffy, contemporary without being cold. Our table was tucked into a quiet corner with soft lighting and enough privacy for conversation. "How did you manage to get a reservation here?" I asked as we settled in. "I've heard it's booked solid for months." A hint of the old James, confident, resourceful, flashed in his smile. "Let's just say it involved calling in a favor from a client who happens to know the chef. We ordered cocktails, then studied the menu, commenting on the more adventurous offerings. Squid ink risotto with sea urchin foam?" I read aloud, raising an eyebrow. "Brave enough to try it," James challenged. I laughed. "Maybe on our second date." The words slipped out before I could analyze them, creating a moment of charged silence, our second date, as if there would be more evenings like this, more chances to rebuild. James's expression softened. "I'll hold you to that." The dinner progressed with surprising ease. We talked about books we'd read recently. a documentary series James had started, watching, an upcoming exhibition at the art museum I wanted to visit. Carefully neutral topics that nevertheless revealed aspects of ourselves we'd stopped sharing in the comfortable routine of marriage. "Remember that trip we took to Santa Fe?" James asked as we shared a dessert, a complicated deconstructed tiramisu that was more art than food. "That gallery we stumbled upon with the incredible glass sculptures? The one where you almost knocked over a $12,000 piece trying to take a photo?" I teased. James winced at the memory. "I've never seen anyone move as fast as that gallery owner. I thought he was going to tackle me." "I think he considered it," I laughed. "But then you charmed him with your genuine interest in the artistic process, and by the end he was offering us wine and telling stories about the artists." "We never did that again," James remarked thoughtfully. "Came close to destroying valuable artwork?" I joked. "No," he smiled. "Traveled just to explore, with no real agenda, no work conferences to attend or family to visit. Just us, discovering. A place together." He was right. Our early relationship had been filled with spontaneous trips, weekend jaunts to cities neither of us had visited, road trips with only a vague destination in mind. Somewhere along the way, travel had become another item on our carefully organized schedule, planned months in advance and documented in detailed itineraries. "Maybe we should," I suggested impulsively. "Go somewhere, I mean. Not now, but someday." "Where would you want to go?" James asked, a hopeful note in his voice. I considered the question. "Somewhere we've never been. Somewhere completely new to both of us." "Quebec City," James suggested. "Or New Orleans. Or Savannah. All places you've researched." I observed, surprised. James looked slightly embarrassed. "I may have spent some time looking at potential trips in the past few months, places I thought you might enjoy." While he was also messaging Ellie about their Boston rendezvous, a bitter voice in my head noted, I pushed the thought away, determined not to let it poison this tenuous peace we were building. "They all sound interesting," I said instead. "We should keep them in mind." After dinner, neither of us seemed ready to end the evening. We walked along the riverfront, the city lights reflecting on the water's surface, creating the illusion of a second mirror city beneath the waves. "This was nice," I said as we leaned against the railing, watching a boat glide past. "I'm glad we did it." "Me too," James agreed. "It felt normal," I suggested. "Better than normal," he corrected. "It felt real, like we were actually seeing each other, not just going through the motions." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "I've missed that, being truly present with each other. Can I ask you something?" James turned slightly to face me. "Not about the affair, or the therapy, or any of it. Just about tonight. Of course, if this had been an actual first date with someone you just met, would you want to see them again?" The question caught me off guard with its vulnerability. James was essentially asking if, knowing him as he was now, I would choose to start something with him. A question far more complex than it appeared on the surface. "Yes," I said softly, surprising myself with the certainty of my answer. "I would." Relief washed across his features. "Good, because I'd definitely call for a second date." As we drove home, a comfortable silence settled between us. Not the tense, unspoken words of the past week, but the quiet of two people content in each other's presence. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it felt like progress. At the house, another moment of awkwardness as we reached the front door. The dating conceit had served us well all evening, but now reality reasserted itself. We weren't new acquaintances concluding a promising first date. We were a married couple in crisis, navigating the aftermath of betrayal. "Thank you for tonight," James said as we stepped inside, "for giving us, the chance to remember why we chose each other in the first place." "It was good to remember," I acknowledged. "But James, one nice evening doesn't erase what happened." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not suggesting it does. I just hope it shows that what we have is worth fighting for." I nodded, too tired suddenly to continue the conversation. The emotional effort of maintaining the evening's pretense had drained me. "Good night, James." "Good night, Kate." He hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. When I didn't, he placed a gentle kiss on my cheek, respectful of my boundaries but hopeful in its tenderness. In bed that night, I replayed the evening, examining my feelings with the careful attention of someone handling fragile glass. The truth was, I had enjoyed myself. For a few hours, I'd glimpsed the James I'd fallen in love with. Thoughtful, engaging, fully present. But was that enough to rebuild a marriage on? Or was it merely a pleasant interlude in what would ultimately be a journey toward separation? The next morning, I had my first individual session with Dr. Reeves. Without James present, I found myself speaking more freely about my confusion, my lingering anger, and my fear of making the wrong decision. It sounds like you're placing enormous pressure on yourself to have all the answers right now, Dr. Reeves observed. But healing and deciding are processes, not events. What if I never know for certain? I asked. What if I'm always wondering whether staying was the right choice or just the easier one? There's rarely absolute certainty in these situations, she replied, but I find that most people do eventually reach a place of knowing. Not because the decision becomes obvious, but because they become clearer about what they truly want and need. And in the meantime, I pressed, in the meantime, you continue doing exactly what you've been doing, creating space to understand your feelings, engaging honestly with James about the issues in your marriage, and allowing yourself to experience moments of connection without feeling that each one is a referendum on your entire future. Her advice made sense, though applying it was easier said than done. Every interaction with James felt loaded with significance, every moment of warmth or distance analyzed for what it might portend about our chances of reconciliation. James had his own individual session with Dr. Reeves the following day. He returned. From it subdued, thoughtful. "How was it?" I asked when he found me working in the garden, attempting to redirect my restless energy into something productive. "Intense," he admitted, kneeling beside me to help pull weeds from the flower bed. "She doesn't pull punches." "Good," I said, perhaps a bit too emphatically. James smiled slightly. "Yes, it is good, hard, but necessary." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "She asked me to really examine what I was getting from the relationship with Ellie that I felt was missing with you." My hands stilled in the soil. "And validation," he said simply. "Not sexual or romantic validation, though there was an element of that. But validation of a self I felt was disappearing. The younger, more adventurous, less settled version of me. The version you think I don't see anymore?" I surmised. "The version I stopped showing you," he corrected. Somewhere along the way, I started compartmentalizing, reliable James at home, spontaneous James elsewhere. Instead of integrating all aspects of myself into our relationship, it was an insight I hadn't expected, one that reframed the issue. Not as a deficiency in our marriage, but as a failure of integration on James's part.